Good afternoon, everyone. And I already feel a little bit uncomfortable because you're all the way back there and there's nobody up here. But I'm reaching you. I'm reaching out to you, but I have to stay here because of the video. So my apologies, because normally I would just come sit in a circle with you, because this is not my style either. It's to sit in a circle. Would you like to translate that?
No.
Okay.
Ngisacela ukuthi simlalele umama njengoba webhalile lapha ku presentation ukuthi igama lakhe uMartha wakaLipster uyi founding director yale ndawo lebhaliwe lapha iBamboo Bridge Tea House. So uyena ke ozosithulela inkulumo yakhe njengamanje useyasho ukuthi already akasakhulekanga ngoba ngathi wonke umuntu uselele ezantsi and uyena useledwa la ngaphezulu, but uthena no, it's fine, uzoqhubeka ke.
Okay, so I'm going to start with a story of how I came to work with indigenous knowledge and nursing, and I hope that you can relate to this story. It's a story of a plant called Hypericum perforatum in Latin. It's St. John's wort. And many years ago, I was working in a rural area of the United States called the state of Montana, big sky country. And we were delivering babies by water birth, and I was working with a midwife. I'm an advanced practice nurse in psychiatry with a specialty in infant mental health. But I was working with a midwife who was delivering the babies, and she was trained that when the baby was crowning, that she would massage the perineum with an oil made from this plant. And so I watched many times that even in the Western world or in the United States, we wouldn't have to use episiotomy. Women could actually sing, use water, and anoint the perineum with this plant, which, by the way, is considered a noxious weed in the United States. That means you're supposed to get rid of it because it propagates too much by itself, but it really doesn't. It doesn't have that personality at all. Its personality is that it's a major healer. And so we make an oil from the flowers. It's a red oil. That's where it gets its name. So I won't go into many details because we don't have a lot of time today. I was going to tell you a little bit about the plant, but I'll just move on and tell you the story. Many years ago, I had been told an ancient wisdom teaching in herbalism that the medicine that we need grows outside our back door. I don't know if you have that teaching too, but I've heard it in many places around the world. But I was young and I was a budding scientist in nursing, and I said, that's a really interesting teaching. I wonder if it's true, right? So I tucked it away in the back of my mind, and later on, when I was working at a hospital before I went to graduate school to study infant mental health, I was working in a postpartum unit at a hospital where the physicians and the advanced practice nurses had been doing third-degree episiotomies, those kinds that you have to deliver the baby by cutting all the way back to the rectum. There is no research on how terrifying that is for a woman, especially later in life. There isn't a lot of data on that, but we know that to be true, that this is not a good thing. However, we were doing it over and over to save the life of the mother and the baby, right? So there were these third-degree episiotomies, and while I was there, I remembered this plant. And I remembered Roberta massaging perineums and delivering the babies without episiotomy at all, without tearing, and the water births. And I was so torn up in my heart. How could we keep doing this way, this really violent way to deliver babies into the world? And then secondarily, why can't I tell my story in the biomedical system that I knew so well and we did over and over with such efficacy in Montana? So I had that question. So during this time, it was June. This plant is harvested in June, around June 24th. That's where it got its American or English name, St. John's wort. It's the Feast of St. John, June 24th. But my friends and I, who normally go to harvest the flower and make our own oil and tinctures and so forth, we make medicine together, we were all over the mountains in Boulder, Colorado and so forth, and we couldn't find any of this plant anywhere. It was so unusual, and we were talking on the phone. have you found any plants? Where are we going to go? So now it is into July. It's summertime in the United States, in Colorado, way up in the mountains. And I went to work. Remember, this is where we were having all of these episiotomies. And I got to work, and the sign outside the hospital said, you must park in the back of the hospital. And I said, well, that's great, because the back door to my obstetric unit is in the back of the hospital, the back door. So I'm going to come in the back door today, not a problem. So the sun is coming up. Don't get ahead of me on the story. You're already anticipating, right? Yes, it's true, but I'll tell the story. So you get to the back of the hospital, 6:30 in the morning, the sun is coming up. There's a huge 3 football fields behind the hospital, and the other houses, the rural houses, are in the back. And I looked as I was kind of sleepy getting up to go in the back door, and I said, and there were all these yellow flowers all over the field. And I said, no, can't be, right? Even though my father said I talked to plants my whole life, and I love plants so much, I still was experimenting with ideas and thoughts about truth and wisdom teachings and all of those things and testing ideas. So I went to work, yet another episiotomy, and I said, okay, that's it. I punched out the clock. I went to my car, I put on my boots, and I went out in that field, and it was an entire 3 football fields of that flower. I said, oh my goodness, you came from the mountains to help me. The consciousness of the plant, my desire for the plant, now you know who I am. I told Annie Grace that she didn't need to introduce me, I would let this plant introduce me, because it called me to a dream that I had had many years before about talking to you and many other people about plants. The difference is that many of you know this kind of story very well. So the other part that you may not know is that those of us who have been in academia and do have degrees and do read books about this stuff, and in addition to my grandfather taught me medicine, so I was walking the bridge, right? Both sides. The second part of the story is that I didn't know how to tell my nurse manager, the nurses, the obstetricians, that our medicine for these women in pain, and the babies that I care about who are going to be delivered through 3rd-degree episiotomy and that kind of trauma, that the medicine was not just outside the back door, it was football fields in the back door. So that was what started me on this journey and why I'm here today, how I met Professor Kaya. Thanks again for inviting me. So it's been about 33 years since, about 30 years since that happened. And here we are. And I did want to tell you about this, that we did harvest the plant. We did go out and we made oil from the plant. Because I didn't bring a big bag to come here, I was going to bring some of the oil to share with you. But I'm sorry about that. We did make oil, and then the next year we went back, and there wasn't a single St. John's wort plant in all the field. We walked the whole place. Of course, I did ask my husband and my friends to come and harvest it with me because I thought I was going crazy, because there it was, and we couldn't find it anywhere else. Do you want to translate that?
Okay.
I'm just going to give you the summary.
Ngizonikeza summary kodwa your story is very interesting. Ukhuluma ngalesi hlahla lesi esibizwa nge-St. John's wort waphesheya. Kade chaza ukuthi wayeke size labo mama labo babelethisa emanzini. Mhlawumbe nike nibone ku TV bayayithanda leyo nto ukuthi umuntu wemfaka emanzini bese sebeyambelethisa khona. Uthi ke khona amafutha alesihlahla ababesigcoba lapha before umuntu ebelethe kuze engasikwa nanongnweba ukuthi banweba lapho ingane ezophuma khona. So ikwazi ukuthi umuntu etete ehleze embona abantu benza lokho. Uphinde futhi ebe yinesi. So wathethe sebuyele esibhedlela kwaba khona i-department lapha asebenza khona. Uma efika khona ilaba abasika umuntu wesimame kuze kucishe ukufika ngemuva. So uthi inhliziyo yakhe yababhlungu esebona leyo nto ukuthi hawo khona abantu abakwazi ukubeletha bengasikwanga mase laba besikwa kuze kucishe nje kuphele ngabo and esazi isihlahla ukuthi siyasiza esho ukuthi waye basebeqala besibheka yonke indawo kanti ngelinye ilanga kuzothiwa bapake ngemuva mase siyapaka ngemuva nasi isihlahla sesikhona beqale ukuthi bewenzela amafutha uyasho ukuthi kube kuthiwa befike nesikhwama esikhulu ubezowaphatha amanye amafutha but isona lesihlahla lesi abasenzayo bakhipha amafutha khona mase sekube yiwona abawugcoba basiza ngawo umuntu wesimame so isona story lesashoyo uthi ke sekuneminyaka ewu30 I think aqala ukuthi esebenze ngalesi sihlahla so into futhi naye ayithandayo ke ngoba wafundiswa umkhulu wakhe ukuthi umuthi noma into zokuphilisa ikhona ku backyard yakho so ikhona lokho kade kusho ukuthi yikho ngithena istory sakhe si interesting ngoba ubane sebethola indlela yokuthi umuntu wesimame bemsiza ukuthi ebelethe kalula.
Thank you so much. I've never had that story. I've told it many times, but I've never had it translated. Thank you so much. I mean, in that language. It's so beautiful. So that was the beginning. I'm not going to take a lot of time to tell you. I'm just going to catch you up. We created the Bamboo Bridge with the International Honor Society in Nursing back in 2006. I had the honor of meeting my friend, Professor Mavis Malauzi, in 2007 in Baltimore, Maryland, where I did a presentation on the Bamboo Bridge. And so she's going to help us this afternoon as well. She's part of our delegation here at this conference. But the purpose of the Bamboo Bridge and the Global Tea House was to bring together people who were working in the biomedical field and people who were traditional and indigenous healers, so that we would bring people together to have a cup of tea. And we didn't design the tea. Every type we go to, if we go to New Zealand or we go to Oregon or wherever we go, depending if it's a conference or a retreat or whatever, or say this, we usually have a different kind of tea that's designed through the process. We're very much about the process. We don't have a fixed design for each tea house, just that two of us have to be there who are partners and so forth. So this is our Global Tea House version for this event around sexual reproductive health and helping us all to formulate a plan. And so oftentimes our global tea houses are used, we use a World Cafe format or some kind of format where people are moving and discussing and so forth to come up with ideas of how to bridge, how to bring together these cultural worlds through health culture diplomacy. And I'm going to talk a little bit about health culture diplomacy today. That's what Professor Kai has asked me to do.
So into akhuluma ngayo ukuthi babona ukuthi ngcono ukuthi bethole indlela yokuthi abantu abanjengaye abantu abasebenza ku biomedical sphere noma laba abasebenza lokho kwaseNtshonalanga whether manesi yini kodwa abanothando lolwazi lendabuko abafisayo ukuthi besebenzise bethole indawo yokuthi bexoxe bekwazi ukubona ukuthi bakwazi ukusebenzisana kanjani.
So I'm going to start with an experiment. And this is for everyone to do. I'd like you to look at the picture. Can we turn down the lights for just a moment and then turn them back up, just so everybody can see the picture very clearly?
So khona into esizozama ukuthi senze i-experiment encane eyokuthi sibuke lesi sithombe lesi angicabanga ukuthi asibeke lapha ngaphambili.
I call this a perception experiment.
Le experiment ibizwa nge-experiment.
Okay, so what do you see when you look at this slide?
A bird,
right. So you see a bird or a parrot perched on a log here. So I'm going to tell you, since in the interest of time, can you see the woman perched on the log?
Uyabuza ukuthi niyambone kodwa umuntu wesimame ehleli kulolu godo.
When you can see it, raise your hand.
Uma usumbona ucela uphamise isandla.
It's okay if you don't. I'm a psychiatric nurse, so you're okay. It just is a perception experiment.
Hayi uma ningamboni futhi akunankinga.
Okay, so I don't have a pointer, but I'm going to point out. Does anybody see it?
Ukhona yini obonayo?
Okay. So she's sitting like this, and her leg. So here's her leg, here's her other leg, and she's sitting like this with her arm over her head and the eye up here. There's her chin up there. Can you start to see it?
So nangumuntu esimama uhleli isandla sakhe usithe kanje, now I see it.
You see it now?
Usithe
Okay, so you
kanje
can put-
and umlenze wakhe uthe
So let it
kodwa
soak
umbala
in.
yakhona ihlukile ifana njengale yenyoni hayi noma lokho akugqokile noma.
It's soaking in, right? Okay, so if you don't see it, that's okay. I can show it to you later because in the interest of time, I'm going to keep moving. But you're okay if you don't. But the point of this slide is to say, now I want you to try. Those of you who saw it, try to not see the woman in the bird. It's very hard to do. Translate that if you
So njengamanje usethi uma kuya ngokuthi ukubonile ukuthi umuntu wesimame lo zama ukubona ukuthi futhi akusiyo umuntu wesimame lo noma zama ukususa isithombe somuntu wesimame kulesi sithombe senyoni osibonayo.
So our job of bridging is to get people to see. Once they see, that's the work. That's where, and in your plan, all of this stuff that you want to do, you're going to have to spend 90% of your time doing that work that we just did. And it's harder than seeing a bird and a woman. But I call this cultural diplomacy work yes and. So we start all dialogue. When somebody says something to you, you say yes and then you add your content. It's like, yes, I see the bird and I see the woman, so you can have both.
So umsebenzi ke awubona khona ukuthi bona into abayenzayo ukuthi bebone ukuthi umuntu uyabona yini umsebenzi wabo lobo yikho lapha phezulu bebhala ukuthi yebo and yebo futhi so ubuzosho ukuthi yebo ngiyambona umuntu esimame futhi nenyoni so ukukhombisa ukuhlangana kwezinto ezimbili.
So when we're talking to people, and it's on both sides of the equation, when a biomedical practitioner is trying to talk to a sangoma is trying to talk to a biomedical practitioner, they're in this mode of diplomacy, bringing culture to each other, and it's in the healthcare realm. So I'm going to talk about health culture diplomacy. And this is one of the things I've done. I was taught by that German healer over in the corner. I was taught foot reflexology back when I was going to nursing school in 1984, and I've actually written a book on the subject. This is all based on you can just treat the feet. We use it in childbirth, but we also treat the entirety, both feet, and I use herbal applications for the feet. So this is one of the things I've been introducing in nursing for 30-something years, and it's interesting. People think I'm a witch too.
Okay, le ncwadi le ayibhaliwe lapha iscience ye energy flow incwadi ayibhalile esizwa noma esebenzisana kanye naloya nalesa sithombe esincane esivele lapha somuntu okuyena wayemqeqesha ngokuthi umuntu umlapha kanjani njengenyawo kuphela angithi sike sizwe kuthiwa umuntu umthinto onyaweni khona lapha thinteka khona emzimbeni so uthi for over 30 years ubeseke wazama ukuthi lento eyifake kulaba bamanesi ukuthi usiza kanjani noma ulapha kanjani umuntu ngokumthinta nokusebenzisa umuthi engxenyeni ezithize zenyawo zakhe.
So you can bridge the two worlds, and because I'm on the continent of Africa, I do want to call your attention that we think that this originated, if not before, at least in Egypt. So because there are these Egyptian glyphs that show that this is a traditional form of healing to Africa.
So lento lenje banibona isithombe lesi esiveza abantu engathi yilabo baseGibhitha kubhaliwe ukuthi uyasho nakhona ukuthi bayazi ukuthi lo mbhalo ukhombisa ukuthi lento yaqala eAfrica eGibhitha.
And these are just some things. You can go to my website. I'll be happy to point you to my website on some of the things, the projects that we've done to operationalize this bridging work, from research to all sorts of things. I'm going to just get on with the health culture diplomacy part of this talk. We have conducted action research on the academic side, and we've done model development. We've published, that's our model in health culture diplomacy there that has been published. And we also work with traditional people all over the world, as some of these pictures designate, to actually, as I talked to you before, about bringing people together, to have these conversations like you're having here today.
Sesike sasebenza ke endaweni eziningi ukuze lo msebenzi lo ukwazi ukuthi uqhubekele phambili kade ngikhuluma ngabo ukuhlanganisa inhlaka zasentshonalanga kanjalo nalokho kwesintu and sebehambile kakhulu bezama ukuthi begqugquzele noma ukupromote ukusebenza kwalendlela bona babona ngakhona ukuthi bengakwazi ukusebenzisana.
And I bring you greetings from a traditional healer in the United States of America. She is very elderly now, and she's a Mohawk elder. She asked me to get a first edition of this book back many years ago, and this is what I read. So I'm just going to, from our tradition, I just need to read a few words from it because she passed me this tradition and this story. So I'll just need to, because of time, I won't read very much. I wipe away the tears from thy face, said Daganawida, using the white fawn skin of pity. I make it daylight for thee. I beautify the sky. Now shalt thou do thy thinking in peace, when thine eyes rest on the sky, which the perfecter of our faculties, the master of all things, intended should be a source of happiness to man.
So lencwadi afunda kuyona uthi isiyalezelo esiqhamuka kumelaphi endabuko waphesheya othena ucela ukuthi bemfundele kule section lencwadi ekhombisa nje ukubaleka ukuthi abantu kumele usibesizane ngobunye bekwazi ukuthi beqhubekele phambili.
Cultural diplomacy has been defined by the Institute of Cultural Diplomacy in Berlin as a course of actions which are based on, I'll just let you guys read it and then you can go ahead and translate it. That probably saves time.
Okay. So lokhu indlela yokubeka ngokwamasiko bathi indlela yokwenza egcile exhumaneni noma exchangeeni ngembono kanjalo nezinto esikholwayo namasiko ukuze sizokwazi ukuthi siqinise ubudlelwane siphinde futhi siqinise nezinto zasemphakathini nokusebenzisana ukuthuthukisa izinto zezwe zalelozwe lelo noma ifiso zalezilozwe lokhu futhi abakubiza ngokuhlonipha lokwa kwe-culture kungenzeka ukuthi kungaba lapho sibiza khona nge-public sector leza kahulumeni noma ngaba ile mkhakha leyo yokusebenza kwe-private sector akuvamise ukuthi abantu abangasebenzeli uhulumeni noma inkampani mangase ngisho njalo mase sekuba abantu nje basemphakathini.
And this is what we're about here today. It's a broader frame for holding all of the reframing and all of the work that you're about. Here are some examples of cultural diplomacy: the Olympic Games, music concerts that travel around the world, panda diplomacy, and yoga. There are some concerns with all of these, and I encourage all of you to have these same concerns, such as intellectual property sharing. I brought that up earlier today. And acquisition, piracy, biopiracy, taking that intellectual property without sharing the revenue from that is one example of many. Communication, another major issue and concern. Respecting each other and the dignity of each other's work, meaningful work on all sides of the equation.
Mese ke sekuba khona lezi zinto lezi abantu abakusebenzisayo mase sibuka kulento ayibiza nge-cultural diplomacy noma lokhu kwamasiko ethahlukile uma usubuka ama-Olympic Games uphinde futhi ubuke nalokho abantu abahambayo beyocula ukuze mhlawumbe umuntu uzocula ngendlela yakhe mhlawumbe ecula isindlela yesindebele noma indlela yesiZulu kanjalo lezo zinto lezo zine ngenzeka ukuthi abanye bephinde kube nokukhathazeka ababa nakho ngalokho uma sesibuka ukuthi lokhu ilento abayibiza nge-intellectual property indlela yokucabanga kumuntu othize siyakwazi ke lokho kwe-intellectual property sihle sikhuluma kakhulu nanokuthi bayashare uma usubuka lento into esetshenziswayo nje esivuleleke esidlangalaleni kanjalo futhi iyakwazi ukuthi intshontsheke kuphinde futhi kube nalokhu ukuxhumana ukuthi xhumana kanjani nanokuhlonipheka nanesigqisa leyo nto uma isiphumele emphakathini nesebenzisa nje isinomi kanjani.
So for example, a few years ago I had a doctoral student who was doing a study on yoga. She's a African American woman who was doing a study on yoga in pregnancy, and I was asked to join her committee. And my role is doing this with Bamboo Bridge. I said, where in your literature search is any of the original Patanjali writings, or any of the original writings of Sri Yukteswar or Yogananda on bringing yoga to the West, for example, or what yoga really is. So it's on both sides that we have to support the original intent of traditions if we engage with the universities with traditional healing, and vice versa. You know, when the universities go to the bush, you know, there are certain policies and histories and traditions that are respected and dignified by all of that work.
Khona ke izinto njalo kumele ukuthi zihlonishwe ngisho nanoma kuthiwa abantu benza ucwaningo useyachaza ke isibonelo somunye umfundi osekwafika ethi wenza ucwaningo ngalento abayibiza ngeyoga okuyindlela yokuzivocavoca so wabuza ukuthi ulwazi lakho ulithathe kuphi uma usubuka ucwaningo lakho ukuthi ngoba ukhona umuntu owaqala wayenza lento ukuthi uyisebenzisile yini ulwazi oqhamuka lapho noma iliterature eqhamuka lapho ungathi ukuthi umuntu evele ebhale izinto zakhe.
And some of the older faculty on the committee said, why are you asking for that? Again,
abanye abadala bathi ukubuzelani kwasakhona lokho.
I didn't mean to start a war, right? It's about peacemaking, right? But sometimes there is discourse that becomes very difficult. So communication, very important.
So uveza ukubaleka ukuthi kube khona uxoxisano kuba khona ngoba uyasho ukuthi abanye abajabulelanga ukubuza kwakhe lokho kodwa ubehlose ukuthi azi ukuthi kunjalo kuyahlezi ixoxisana noma kusetshenziswana.
A colleague and friend of mine invited me after a lot of this work to go to the World Health Organization in 2004. She was the chief nursing scientist at the time. She's now the WHO representative for Sudan and the head of country office of the World Health Organization in Sudan. She is from Bahrain. Her name is Dr. Naima Al-Ghazir. And I told her I was coming to talk with you and to share with you and to hear what you were all doing. And I asked her if she had a message for you. And Annie Grace, this is for you. She said, wishing all conference attendees the best handling of two critical topics affecting women, men, youth, and children, leaving no one behind. Respecting dignity of all is our core humanity, which will guide us to serve the most vulnerable regardless of their age, color, religion, sex, or ethnicity, or socioeconomic position. We need to get back to basics. Sensitizing and relearning and practicing the ethics of care and caring fully. Practicing values under the oath taken by us as healing professionals to do no harm and to serve. So nursing really leads internationally with the focus on caring as a science and as a human practice and endeavor. So we have worked in cultural sensitivity, cultural awareness, and cultural competence, and cultural humility, all of which suggest reflection. The reason we adopted cultural diplomacy is because it is action-oriented. Think about that for a moment. Cultural sensitivity, all of these trainings around the world suggest reflection, and reflective practice is a part of our model. However, what do you do? And when Professor Kaya asked me to come, he said, how do you get people to move forward and keep moving forward, right? And this is what we do. The Maori did a lot of work and continue to do a lot of work, very good work on cultural safety, which is also action-oriented. However, in my readings of that work, I find, and I've heard from many people around the world, that it is very Maori-focused. So that's why we adopted cultural diplomacy. And health culture diplomacy is the integration of health with this notion of cultural diplomacy, where we integrate health beliefs and perceptions, much like going back to the parrot slide, what your perceptions are of health. And there are 4 cultural traditions that we focus on: the biomedical, complementary therapies, which some are brand new. They've been created over the last decade or 2, and there are constantly more and more different types of massage and so forth. It's become a subculture of the biomedical. Since I started 30 years ago, it was truly a separate culture, and there was a lot of, in the West, in particular in the United States and parts of Europe and so forth, there was a lot of marginalizing even of these traditions like foot reflexology. There still is, but now it's very much been brought into biomedicine, and in some ways, it's not, a lot of the traditions have become more biomedicalized as a dominant culture. That will happen in dominant culture. So I've put it here as a subculture. We also talk about traditional and indigenous, and then self-care. This is the part where people are in their homes. It's a very powerful part of nurses' focus, and we have a lot of nursing science and a lot of nursing theory and research around supporting self-care. So a lot of traditional indigenous healers that I've worked with around the world focus on self-care as well. So I call this a tiered system where people go to the first step. They step on the first step and they say, I have a problem that I'm trying to solve, or I want to feel better about my health, and they do something on their own. The second step, they might talk to a friend or a colleague. They might talk to somebody else in the community. The third step, they go to somebody in the community, such as a traditional healer. The fourth step, they go to biomedicine, because everyone knows around the world that biomedical care is the most expensive. It's the most expensive. It's difficult to access because right now in the United States we have young people who don't even want to go into medicine because they don't want to live in rural areas at all. They want to live in urban areas. This is what we were just hearing. They're giving away tuition, now to medical schools. So these four cultures, I'm going to let her translate now about that. So this is what we focus on, is this bridging work is done with all four cultures. They must be at the table.
Okay.
Oh, can I just say one thing? So the self-care would be your community. So today we didn't have anybody representative from the community today. So that's your self-care. So when you're designing your gatherings, whatever you decide to do, World Cafe or whatever, you think about who will represent self-care. That would be people in the community. They're stakeholders there.
Okay, ubekade chaza ke okokuqala nje uqala sivezela umyalezo ophuma ku zakwabo omunye osebenza nayo kade ethi uzama ukuseka lo msebenzi lo isiwenzayo namhlanje. Useyachaza ke la ukuthi into ayibukayo, into ebukwayo ukuthi indlela abantu ababuka ngayo lokwelapha lokho asentshonalanga, and ukhombisa ukuthi ngisho nanoma ukwelapha kwesintu noma oku indigenous kukhona, kodwa kuphinde kube khona nalokhu kwe biomedicine. Ngiyazi ukuthi nabelaphi as much as belapha, kodwa engqondweni yabo khona lokhu okuphinde kubenza ukuthi besebenzise noma kube yi-subculture lokhu kwe biomedicine. Angazi ukuthi ngizochaza kanjani, kodwa nje ngizama ukusho ukuthi yize ulapha ngokwesintu, kodwa engqondweni yakho kukhona somewhere izinto lezi zasentshonalanga nazo ezingenayo nakho sekuba yingxenye ungathi isiko lakho somehow, kodwa kungena kanjalo. Ephinde futhi ekhulume ngokuthi ngenxa yokuthi ukwelapha lokhu kwasentshonalanga kuyabiza, umuntu uqale eyibona ukuthi yebo nginenkinga, emva kwalokho eqala ikhulume nomngane wakhe, emva kwalokho kube ukuthi uxhumana nomelaphi wesintu wangakube kube kuyikhani egcina le ekuthenini ukuthi eyobona odokotela ngenxa yokuthi bayabiza. Useyasho futhi usinaphesheya abantu abaningi noma izingane eziningi ayisafisi ngisho nanokufunda lokhu kokungena ekubeni odokotela, sebe amabhasari yakhona abasawavumi nanokwavuma abanye abantu bakhona.
So you all mentioned primary health care, and so from a WHO perspective, this is cutting edge primary health care work because we're looking at all of these different domains together.
So masikhuluma ngosizo lokuqala, sikhuluma ngokuthi sihlanganisa kanjani konke lokhu esesikhulume ngakho ukuze umuntu ekwazi ukuthi ephile kahle.
And we have publications for those of you who are interested. You can look on my website, but this model is published, and this shows, we have publications that show the exact way we educate. We have educational programs and so forth to bring primarily health professionals into this space to have these discussions.
Zikhona ke izinto sesibhalile, uyasho ukuthi singabheka ku website yakhe ngoba ezinye izinto singayithola khona echazayo ukuthi bafundisa kanjani emphakathini.
The focus is complementarity. This is a term that was coined by Professor Niels Boers, and it's the idea that opposites are actually complementary. It's that yes and mentality again. So a general principle to permit mutual understanding and respect among diverse cultures and allowing for the unity of human knowledge. That's our goal. So we're sharing that with you today.
So isifiso sabo ukuthi besebenzisane ngokubambana ngoba besho ukuthi yize izinto zingafani kodwa ukuhloniphana nanokusebenzisana ikhona lokhu okuzokwenza ukuthi kube khona ukuqonda nanokuhloniphana kwabantu abahlukile noma abaqhamuka emasikweni ahlukile.
There are some considerations. Participation in cultural diplomacy, like communication, is a two-way street. It doesn't go one direction. We already had that conversation today. It is possible for there to be ethnocentrism in the room. I've seen it with students, I've seen it with faculty, I've seen it with colleagues, I've seen it with myself. It's very easy to fall into ethnocentric thoughts and perceptions because we're in the process of learning. Do you want to go with those two first?
No,
Okay.
finish.
Yeah. Okay, the third one, that's I think the most important for the students that I've worked with, whether they're physicians or nurses or pharmacists, is this differentiation of diplomacy from advocacy. So on both sides, if let's say we have polio vaccine, and we say everybody in the world should have a polio vaccination in their lifetime because we don't want to have polio anymore. The people who are carrying that polio vaccine to a community would be advocating for polio vaccine because they've already decided, I think it was Her Excellency that was saying we're the most biased, there's the bias, we already believe, we already know that everybody should have polio vaccine, but what if in 10 years that changes and we really need something else and it's not a vaccine at all? How do we introduce that if we're already closed to the question? So advocacy is very different than diplomacy. Diplomacy, I visualize a round table. In my culture, from my grandparents, we sit around a round table rather than long tables because everyone is going to communicate and talk. So when you're doing diplomacy work, we often use round tables or a round circle of some kind so that we make sure that everybody contributes in some way, even if it's nonverbal. And so that way we're inviting people to open to the question. There are many people who are very impatient for solutions to come immediately, but in this work, it won't happen. I can tell you because I've been doing it a long time. So what we do is we're comfortable with just allowing the process to start. And if you can create, we create a global tea house that way, and we just let the process begin. So don't push this off until you have funding. It's not expensive to do a global tea house or to do something like we do with a global tea house. It's not expensive. We can get people together very informally and do what's called a World Cafe or something like that, right in your university or in your town community center or something like that.
So ukuxoxisana akusiyo indlela nje okubuka ukuthi xoxa umuntu ayedwa kodwa kumele ukuthi kube khona indlela yokubonisana so yikho kuthiwa i-two-way street kuphinde futhi lokhu akade enza isibonelo ngakho ukuthi mhlambe uma ubuka laba abantu abagijima nama-vaccines yonke indawo bethi abantu kumele bewajove labo bantu already sebeya-advocate noma sebeyavuma ukuthi bona bavumelana nalento leshiwoyo so ke kade chaza umehluko phakathi kwalokho ukuxoxisana okuyi-diplomacy nalokho abakubiza nge-advocacy useyasho ukuthi futhi lokho okunye ukuthi ukuba i-diplomacy kusho ukuthi siyahloniphana futhi izinto siyayishare noma siyayixazulula sobabili sonke futhi sonke sithathe umsebenzi wethu noma i-responsibility for lokho esikwenzini.
So I think those are the major considerations. I also wanted to add, I was hearing in the previous discussion about the space and the location, and I think it's also very important to remember that this is a creative process, and we all do this all day long. We create our lives. So if we just allow for that space to see what happens. So people ask me all the time, what is the global tea house? And I say, well, it's different every place we go. You can't just, we all know that culturally, we can't teach culture in one country and go to another country and teach it the same way. We can't, it just doesn't work, and we know that now, but we've tried that kind of colonial approach, right? And it doesn't really work. So now we're onto something different, and there's a lot of support.
Okubalekile ukuthi kade ukuthi le global tea house le abayizama akusiyo into ebizayo ukuthi iqale nanoma ngayiqala ngoba nasemphakathini ungakwazi ukuthi ufundise ngakho kanjalo futhi abafundisi bona indlela mase kufika ukuthi isiko labantu befundisa ngendlela efanayo ngoba abantu abafani namasiko abo awafani.
And if I can end with another story about a plant, I'm not going to tell you a whole story about because I have a million of them, but literally, I think. But this plant in the United States came from Japan. It's Pararia lobata, or known as kuzu or kudzu. And it was imported from Japan and has taken over in the southeastern part of our country, our big country. Like these are actually trees covered in this vine. And when I moved to North Carolina, where it's growing everywhere like this, I have been using it as medicine, the root, for 20 years in practice and healing people with it and helping them to make their own pudding from the root, the starch in the root. When I got there, not a single person, university, community, anywhere, they were all trying to kill this plant. No one, even the native people in the mountains, were trying to kill this plant because they wanted to get rid of it because it's snuffing out the trees. So we have plans for this plant. I can go on and talk about the research dollars and all that kind of stuff we were talking about before for those of you who are interested. But I just wanted to say there's a lot of myth and misunderstanding around this work. It's just it goes with the territory, and so a lot of patience. We have to take our own remedies to deal with patience and bringing people together. But I do always say that from my experience, it's the plants that bring us together. It's the discussion about plants. You've talked a little bit about plants, but the plants often are really good catalysts for meaningful conversation from all sides.
So into engishoyo noma into ayikholwayo ukuthi ihlahla ezihlanganisayo seyasho ukuthi lesi kwenye indawo afika khona basebezama ukuthi bezama ukuyibulala noma bezama ukuqeda ngazo kadena uyayisebenzisa ukuthi elaphe ngazo usebenzisa ixolo lakhona njengoba zisuka eJapan kodwa lapha efika khona ifike igcwale yonke indawo manje uyasho ukuthi abanye abantu bagcina bengazi ukuthi ihlahla ezithize zingabasiza ngani so bagcina sebene misunderstanding noma bengaqondi kahle ukuthi kahle bengasizakala ngani ngehlahla ezithize.
We also talk a lot in the United States about the opiate crisis and also the explosion of the use of marijuana among our youth and the legalization of not just medicinal marijuana but recreational marijuana. And I'm very actively involved in those two issues that are major health crises. Not that necessarily, people are dying from opiate addiction massively. We had a 3-year-old die a few weeks ago, but these are major health crises that are facing our children and youth. And so I've been asked to just talk a little bit about infants and what they bring to the table. And I think it has to do with perception. If you go back to the slide of the woman and the parrot, many people think that they understand the infant and will talk about development, or they'll talk about the woman who's given birth. I do find in the traditional and indigenous community of traditional midwives and birth attendants that they often know exactly what I'm talking about. A lot of the work comes out of India and Africa and also parts of the United States, the doula work and so forth. But the world of the infant, the way an infant views the world is very, very different than what we see in taking care of the father and the mother even. The father and the mother are the environment of the child, and so their creation story is what we call it in our Native traditions, in my personal one and also in Native American tradition. We talk a lot about creation stories and how we start the life of an infant. And that's where it becomes very important for all healers, all community people, all people interested in the health of human beings on behalf of our children to come together. And the 13 indigenous grandmothers have talked about really visioning 7 years or 7 generations down the road, and the formation of the beliefs and practices of health in all human beings begins with the very first breath. So it's very important that we allow for self-care and non-pharmacological care, so forth, with infants. So our approach to infant mental health is a great place to begin the work that you're doing here, because we don't want to over-medicate infants. We have that problem too. So that's
So masasibuka izifo zengqondo yengane uyasho ukuthi asifisa ukuthi sinikeze imithi eminingi kakhulu kubalekile ukuthi zibe nayo indlela yokuthi zisize zona noma zikwazi ukuthi zibe ngcono zona futhi nakhona abantu abayisiza kuqala abazali bazo.
Okay. So I'm going to end with just this short piece of a poet by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. It's called The Builders, so you can see it there. Basically, it's saying, nothing that you're doing is useless or low. Everything, you're architects. You're architecting, you're building a new foundation, and it's hard work, but it's worthwhile. So thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much, Dr. Lipster, for your insightful presentation. Now we are going to give a few minutes to Ms. Tsego Besena. She represents IBIS Sexual and Reproductive Health, an organization that also deals with sexual and reproductive health. Thank you. Glory.
Thank you. Sorry, guys, I'm going to have to really rush through this one. So I'm from IBIS Reproductive Health. It's a global NGO with its headquarters in the US in Cambridge, Boston. And we have an office in Joburg, which basically covers the Southern Africa region. But we have done some work in both Eastern and Western Africa. I had prepared a PowerPoint.
What's the name?
Is this one here? But it's rather lengthy, so I'm not going to go through it. Because the other reason why I'm not going to go through it, because I really prefer to contribute as informed by discussions from this morning. And for me, I think it will just work better that way. So I'm thinking I'm going to have only 3 points, very briefly. The first point is that I want to congratulate the organizers of this meeting. I think I was saying to Dr. Anna Grace earlier that it's such an important meeting. And personally, I work with over 100 NGOs and CBOs in the country, including Department of Health, basic education of women, social development, and I know this is a very important issue, even at government level. And I also know that within our partners, it's a really important issue. And for me, this is why we have to make sure that we use the time as productive as possible. And as much as very often we want to be led by the agenda and how much we cover, for me, sitting there in the corner this morning, I felt this is one meeting where we needed a lot of time to actually sit and discuss issues and to really be on the same page. I don't feel we are on the same page. I feel there's a lot of things that we discussed in the morning that we're not on the same page about, and we need to start discussing how we actually get through those. And why do I say that? The first point is around some of the charts this morning. We are in this room as researchers. I'm a researcher. I'm a psychologist. Actually, I trained at UKZN in the Maritzburg campus. And we also have academics, and we have Abogogo at the back. And I feel that it will be unrealistic to think that we're going to have a one-day meeting and kind of cover everything and get out of here with an answer. So for me, when some of the healers in the morning were speaking, so much of what is in my current field and what is discussed with my, some of the partners, including government, that we don't agree on came up. And for me, I feel it's those uncomfortable issues that we need to have these meetings and discuss. I've discussed with a couple of colleagues in the room, and I really would have loved to have more time, and I would love for you to, to summarize where you think is useful. But for me, my organization work mainly with young girls. We have a national campaign called Moho. It's a Sotho word meaning together. And it was informed by the high rates of unplanned teen pregnancies in the country. And that campaign is rolled out throughout all the 9 provinces. And I can tell you in each and every province, we have different feedback from young girls. An example, with Lifeline Pietermaritzburg, we have heard our facilitators chased away by young girls. So they'll come and talk to them about unplanned pregnancies and how to prevent it, and they'll chase them away and say, you know what, for me, my aim is to actually be a wife when I grow up. So don't come here and tell me not to get pregnant because I need to prove that I'm fertile. That's a young lady in Zululand somewhere. And then you go to Limpopo, in Namibia, you have a different perception of what teen pregnancy is. So that is why I'm saying that we need to really not kind of put things in one basket, but try and acknowledge our diversity in how we actually understand all these issues. We spoke about sexuality in the morning. Her Highness spoke about sexual pleasure. What does that mean to the young person? And we actually talk about sexual pleasure to, to young people or not. What is teen pregnancy? I was saying to one of my, the ladies here that when we first introduced the MOHO campaign, one of the the negative feedback from the DOH, Department of Health, was that why are we saying unplanned teen pregnancy? And we were like, we are in a context where there are women in their teen years who plan to have babies. Our mothers had us mostly when they were teenagers. So we cannot speak about teen pregnancy without acknowledging our history and our context and what that means to us. So if we understand that, how do we then present that to the young person? So you can start with that.
Usiso besachaza ukuthi usuka ku-organization international kodwa bona ba-based eGoli. Ngicabanga ukuthi niyabona lapho ukuthi uyena u-director walapha ama-African programs and usebenza nama-NGO wangaphezulu kwa-100 nama-CBOs angaphezulu kwa-100. Useyasho ukuthi awukwazi ukufika endaweni utshela ukuthi wonke umuntu ucabanga ngendlela efanayo. Uchazile iprogram yabo abanayo ebukelela ukuthi basiza kanjani intsha emitha ingenanhloso, so laba babizwa ngama-unplanned. So bayasho ukuthi bathi bese bayafika kwezinye indawo baxoshwa bathi ingane nizwe ngobani ukuthi ahlelile thina ukuthi yize sibancane ukuthi siyamitha ngoba siyazi ukuthi senzela ukukhombisa ukuthi sokwazi sibe ngomama nomama khosikazi akusasa. So wikhona ke lokho achazayo ke.
So I feel that when I was listening to some of the presentation, we need to be very honest with ourselves and our backgrounds and say, what are some of the issues that as a group, when it comes to IKS, we agree on? And what are those that we actually, at the moment, are on different, like we hold different perspectives on? And for me, that is where we have to spend most of our time. For example, one of the just from my recollection from this morning, there was a comment about, if you don't kind of, want or accept that your husband or your partner is gonna go and be with other women, where do you think he's gonna release? There's something about that this morning. One, there's something about women and how, as a woman, to stay home and accept that a man will go out and sleep with other women and might come with STDs, but it's up to you as a woman to kind of be firm in your traditional beliefs and be of the knowledge of how do you prevent yourself acquiring those STIs. So those are like the two examples. And I was sitting there as Tejo and I'm thinking, how do I say this to a young girl, who's complaining to me already about her fear of HIV? And how do I say this to a married woman who talked to me? I did my internship at Caprisa here in Durban. And I had women who joined the clinical trial, HIV negative, and they became positive. And like, I know, because Ubaba, has other women, but how do I not, kind of allow that to happen? So those are the examples of where we need to say, okay, Gogo, when a young woman asks me that question, how do I engage her? So I get the perspective from our Gogo, and then I also share my experience. For me, that is where we need to find a balance. We need to discuss about those issues, because as long as we don't, we're always going to be in different side of the table. And if we don't engage with those uncomfortable discussions, then these meetings are not going to really work. So that's where I'm coming from. I feel like we need to say what is bringing us together, and where do we differentiate, and how do we engage on that. My last point, I'm very bad in Zulu, but I got some of the things, and there's something about our African languages that sometimes English doesn't really translate as is. And so there are parts when I just felt the passion from, Abugogo at the back. And you know what I mean? So that is really important. And I think for me, one of the things that I think this meeting, or, I don't know, upcoming meetings could do is that we are of different backgrounds. I felt at some point, I'm a very honest person, so if I offend anybody, I do apologize. I felt at some point that Abugogo disconnected with us. Personally, I felt there was a point where they disconnected. And for me, I'm like, when something like that happens, we need to say, why are we feeling this disconnection? Is it because they feel they're not being given the platform that they actually came here for? And how do we make them feel that they're actually not gonna come here to say we're at that meeting, but feel that they actually engage to their satisfaction? I don't know if you guys get what I mean. Like, I just felt that, and I think we are so lucky to actually have that insight in the room. I do so many meetings, we invite traditional healers, and often they don't come, and I'm sitting here, and they're at the back, and I'm learning some of the things. Some of the things made me nearly fall off my chair, but I'm okay. But how do we make sure that they feel that they came here and they were heard, and we are saying, now let us engage more on that? Hence my point around, we need to go for quality, and we're gonna spend more time discussing those issues than rushing through the agenda and finish up and say we had the meeting. So I feel we have to come to a point where we said, as researchers, what would we like to have as outcomes from these meetings as researchers? We cannot think we all have the same expectations of this meeting. It will be ridiculous. So we need to say, as researchers, what would be the most useful outcome from this? As academics, what would be the most useful outcome from this? As Abugogo at the back, why are they here? What will be the most useful outcome for them? And I promise you it's gonna be different outcomes, and it's good, because that's how we get the richness of this, and that's how we start getting the answers of how do we then collaborate with the understanding of what our diverse expertise are, and how we then bring them together to actually, have a coalition or working group that actually answers what we are hoping to get from this meeting.
Okay, ngizozama ukuchaza into usisi bekade yisho. Ubekade echaza ukuthi njengoba sikhona la emhlanganweni sonke silindele izinto ezihlukile noma inhloso zethu zomhlangano ziyahluka, and bekubalekile ukuthi kuzwakala ukuthi umuntu nomuntu iyona iphi into afisa ukuyibona njengomphumela walomhlangano. Uyasho ukuthi kuye kwaba khona isikhathi lapho khathi ehleli lapha ngemuva abone sengathi ogogo bathe ukuqhela emhlanganweni bangaba yingxenye yawo. So usesho yena izinto kade ezibona, useyayibuza ukuthi into afisa ukuyazi ukuthi mhlambe ngabe yini noma into ekumele siyithole ukuthi yindaba yini noma yinto eholela ukuthi lokho kwenzeke. Useyachaza futhi ukuthi sometimes bona beke bebabize abelaphi njengoba eshithi sebenza nabantu abasha nokumitha ngongenhloso kanjalo njengamanye ama programs abo. Uthi begcine bengafikanga noma begcine bengabatholanga, and uyabuka nje lapha njengoba nikhona ukuthi kuhle ukuthi niba yingxenye yalomsebenzi, and kubalekile ukuthi umhlangane njengale kungabi kuba ukuthi iyaphuthunywa sijaha ukuthi siqede noma siqede le agenda, kodwa ukuthi sihlale phansi sikwazi ukuthi sixoxe kubonakala ukuthi lezi inkinga lezi ezilethwela ngaphambili zisizakala kanjani. Uyasho ukuthi yena as ekade ehleli lapha ngemuva izinto ezimbili nje ayizwile zimthusile, ilokhu koqala ukuthi umuntu wesilisa kumele uvume ukuthi uzophuma ehambe, kodwa wena ungabi nayo inkinga lapho ngoba udinga uyikhulula kanjalo. Futhi njengalokhu okushiwo ukuthi njengomuntu wesimame kumele ukuthi uhlale phansi ehamba umebuya uma mhlambe kubuyiselana ngezifo ikhona indlela yokuvikela usiyachaza ukuthi ukwathi ukusebenza eCaprisa kancane wabona ukuthi khona abanye abantu besimame abaqala iprogram yabo bengenaso isandulela ngculaza kodwa emva kwesikhathi bathola sebenaso uma bebuzwa bethi cha besivele sazi ukuthi umkhwenyana wethu uyaphuma ngaphandle uyahamba kodwa ngenxa yokuthi kumele hlale kumele futhi engakhali ngalutho saqhubeka nakho konke ubudlelwane njengoba sebeyithole sebesulelekile ngesifo so izona izinto lezade zisho ukuthi bekufisa ukuthi ngabe izinto ezinjengalezo ziyakwazi ukuthi zixoxwe kabanzi futhi kubonakala ukuthi kudiscusswa kanjani ukuze sophuma nezinto ezwakalayo.
Yeah, I'm going to trust that you did a great job.
Trust me.
Yeah. But I think for me, I'm sorry I have to rush because I had another meeting that started like 45 minutes ago. But for me, that is the important things because I personally get very frustrated when we have meetings and we don't seem to come out of it, having really discussed the things that keep us apart most of the time. So as IBIS, we, like I said, we work with lots of organizations and I'll be very keen to continue working and linking you up with more organizations. And as IBIS is a topic that is very close to us and we are very much willing to be a partner. We can discuss how that's going to work and where we can actually offer support where you guys need support. So I'm happy to discuss more just because it's a key issue, it's an issue that we have all the time. And and again, thank you so much to Bogogo. It was great having them. So I have to rush.
Yes, uyabonga usisi and uyasho ukuthi ke bona bazokwazi ukuthi besize noma uma befisa ukuthi beqhubeke besenze ne-UKZN bengabasiza bebaxhumanise namanye ama-organization ngoba into vele abasebenza kuyona kulokhu kwe-reproductive health and uyabonga kakhulu futhi kogogo ngokuthi beze waphinde futhi wagcizelela ukuthi kubalekile ukuthi intsha ihlale nogogo kuxoxisane kubonakala indlela yokuthi wonke umuntu ugcina ezwana kanjani ngiyabonga uyabonga.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Teko, for giving us an insight of the work that you're doing around sexual and reproductive health care. I do promise and I believe that as we continue with the discussions and as we map the way forward, some of your concerns will actually be addressed. Thank you. Right now, we are going to invite Prof. Memphis Mulawudzi to come and lead the next discussion session. Prof. Mulawudzi is the head of department in the College of Health Sciences at the University of Pretoria. A warm welcome as she comes to the podium.
Professor Mulawudzi njengoba seshilo ukuthi
Head of department.
Uphethe i-department lapha e-University yasePitoli uyena ke engicabanga ukuthi usezohola lo hlelo lokuxoxa okulandelayo.
May we please give a round of applause as she comes up?
Sanbona. Dimasiari. Dumela. Good afternoon. It seems like we are very tired. Are we really tired? This is a very interesting engagement and we're having very good discussions. So we really don't have to be tired. We definitely have to be very attentive. I think my role is very easy. I'm just going to lead discussions. And I thought that it will be better that I just highlight what has been happening since this morning.
Azoyenza ilula kakhulu ngoba uzohola lengxoxo lezoba khona yamanje ntambama uzobe eseqhakambisa ke izinto okukhulunywa ngazo namhlanje kuseni.
I just thought of starting from this morning with the keynote from Her Excellency. I think that was really very thought-provoking, very interesting, and I think she raised a lot of things that are quite interesting. That's why the previous speaker was even giving examples of some of the things that she raised.
So uzoqala ingxoxweni le ka keynote speaker le Her Excellency ayishilo namhlanje kuseni uyasho ukuthi hayi ibi interesting noma ibizwakala impela.
Okay, the first thing that I thought is important and that we can take through this discussion was the issue that she pointed out on the Agenda 2063, which is the rebirth of Africa.
So kubalekile ekumele siyibuke lokwe Agenda 2063 le ukuthi kuzalwa kanjani kabusha iAfrica.
And the other thing that she raised was the issue of sex and reproduction.
Okunye futhi okwesibili ilesocansi nesokuzalisa nosokuzalana.
And the main point that she said there was, can sex and reproduction be bundled together? And her main argument was that sexual pleasure versus reproduction.
Umbuzo ke ube sekuthenini ukuthi ingabe lezocansi nezokuzalana zingahlanganiswa endawonye iwase sethina ngokwakhe cha kumele ukuthi kuhlukaniswe ngoba inhloso zakhona ayifani.
And the other thing that she raised that was very important was the focus on a girl child while the boy child is ignored.
Mase futhi sekube yilokho ukuthi njalo kuhlezi kunakwa amantombazane kodwa abafana benganakwa.
The other interesting presentation was that was presented by our host in terms of defining the platform.
Mase futhi nale any presentation ebekhona le yokuthi kahle kahle inhloso yalenkundla yini.
And I thought there was things that I wanted us to really look at. I looked at the definitions that Annie Grace was using. The definitions that were used were according to the World Health Organization. And maybe the question that we need to ask is, are those definitions relevant to IKS? I think those are the things that we definitely have to look at now when we go to our discussions. And then she also showed us the mind map of the stakeholders. So the question that I was asking there was, is it inclusive? Is it inclusive enough? And then she also raised the key thematic areas. Have you really exhausted all of them in terms of what we view as sexual reproductive health, and having listened to the indigenous holders, have we really done enough?
Meseke omunye umbuzo obekhona ukuthi uma sekufika kulawa ama stakeholders awabalulile ingabe bonke inabantu bazokhaveka khona noma ngabe wonke umuntu oyingxenye yakhona. Mase kufika la seyingcazoleni zakhe incazelo zakhe njengoba kade esho naye ukuthi zibhalwe ngokwalokhu kwase World Health Organization okuyibona babuka kakhulu ngendlela yasentshonalanga manje bayabuza ukuthi ngokwesintu ungabe lokho kuba nawo umthelela noma ngakwazi ukuthi incazelo zishintshe kuze zizokwazi ukuthi phela zibukele lo lwazi lendabuko.
Now we also listen to the IK holders, their presentation, and I thought that their presentation was mainly on supportive and holistic care of a pregnant woman. And I also thought that their presentation was really asking us about advocacy. They were requesting advocacy for mutual respect, which I found very challenging and very interesting. And it's not respect for people, it's respect for the knowledge that they hold. And I also felt that the key message from what they were saying was transfer and sustainability of indigenous knowledge and skills. So I thought those were the three key elements that their presentation really brought into this discussion.
Uma sesibuka futhi nale presentation yenziwa abelaphi bendabuko into ebalekile egcizelelile lokho okudlulisela kulwazi lwabo lesintu kanjalo futhi nanokuthi
Transfer and sustainability.
nanokugcineka kolwazi lesintu ukuthi kwenzeka kanjani lokho.
Yes. And then we then went into a very interesting session, the session for discussion, which also raised a very, very important issues that we definitely have to delve into now. And that was the issue of community engagement, reframing the policy framework, policy interface, understanding the healthcare system, the thematic areas, key focus areas and method, ritual and beliefs, and how we are going to situate them in modern perspective, and also the issue of database and a journal.
Mese sesiyabuka ke nalokho kuyo kwathi ukukhunywa ngakho namuhla kule ngxoxo yasekuseni ukuthi one lokhu kwe database nama journal ukuthi kubhalwa kanjani siphinde futhi sibuke lama thematic areas noma lezi indawo lezi sithena sizogxila kuzona ukuthi zona ngabe zihamba kahle yini kuphinde kube nalokho kwe policy kwemthetho sisekelo ukuthi khona ingabe njengoba uprof uke washo khathi kukhulume indaba ye discussion ukuthi kuyadingana ukuthi kube noshintsho endleleni noma kulokhu osekubhaliwe okungalekelela le process.
Thank you. And then now, after lunch, we have talked about issues of cultural diplomacy from our colleague Martha Lipster. And I thought that her emphasis was on the issue of integrative healthcare, the use of herbs, and creation of sacred spaces. I thought those were the three key messages that a presentation brought.
Mese kula presentation lebe khona emva kwe lunch ebuka kakhulu ukuthi kusetshenziswana kanjani abasetshonalanga kanjalo nalabo abasebenzisa amakhambi esintu mese sekufika ukuthi futhi kuqhubekela kanjani indlela yokuxoxisana kwamasiko ahlukene and then
creation of sacred spaces.
O nanokukhanda ke kweindawo esingathi indawo ungakwazi ukuthi uyisebenzise noma mhlambe angeke ngisho ngithi umsamo kodwa indawo kanjalo sacred abangakwazi ukuthi abantu besebenzise.
Okay, and then the last speaker, I just asked her why did she bring a very sensitive issue, and then from there she runs away. Because from her presentation, I think she was identifying the issue of generation gap, which I think is really, really very important. And she should have stayed so that when we discuss this, there must be an understanding. Some of the things that she raised were really, really very critical on how SRH really works or operate going forward. And she also raised the issue of cultural diversity and different belief systems. So I thought all those things were really very important. But to try and narrow the discussion, I was just trying to raise issues that really came up since this morning. But I think if we would like to have a structure, maybe we need to answer the following questions in our discussions. I think the other thing that came up that I also raised was the thinking. If I'm looking at you, I'm wearing these glasses because I can't see you. So I have different glasses. I've got the glasses that I use to see and read, and in the evening I've got glasses that I wear because I want to drive. I can't see in the evening, so my lenses differ. Explain that.
Okay, okokuqala uqale wakhuluma ngokuthi presentation yokugcinela usisi ebekhona ubebuka ukuhluka kweminyaka nangendlela abantu abacabanga ngakhona phakathi kwabantu abadala nezingane ezincane nanokuhluka futhi kwamasiko abantu noma izinkolo zabantu kuya ngamasiko akhona and useyasho ke manje ukuthi indlela esibuka ngakhona iyahluka useyenza ke sibone thina lezi zibuko lezayigqokile uyigqokile ukuthi uyafunda ngazo o noma ayabona ngazo emini kodwa uma seshayela noma eshayela ebusuku kumele useyishintshe ibuko egqoke ezinye ngoba akaboni so lokho kubuyisa indlela yokubaleka kwalokhu okusebenzisayo ukuze uzobona nangendlela obuka ngakhona.
Yes, I think I'm asking and I'm making this illustration to ask the first question. We are talking about indigenous sexual reproductive health. So if we're talking about indigenous sexual reproductive health, we must look at it with new lenses, with new glasses, not the glass that I wear when I'm teaching sexual reproductive health in a modern perspective.
So njengoba sizokhuluma ngalokho sizoxoxa ngakho namhlanje kumele sazi ukuthi sibuka ngamehlo ahlukile.
So the question that I'm asking is, how can we reframe? How do we look at SRH in an IKS lens?
So senza kanjani ukuthi sibuke kulokho esikhuluma ngakho namuhla i-sexual and reproductive health ngamehlo noma ngezibuko zolwazi lendabuko.
And I would invite responses.
And ngiyobe sengicela ke ukuthi abantu bephendule noma bephawule kulokho ebengade ngikhuluma ngakho.
Siyibona njani le SRH?
Siyibona kanja, how do we see the sexual and reproductive health?
This is one of the languages that's very difficult for me, but I'm trying. So please, let's open up, let's talk. The people that have invited us want us to give them information. So we are now looking at SRH. We are not looking at it from the modern perspective. We want to look at it from the IKS perspective. How do we reframe? Prof?
Thank you very much, Prof. Mulaudzi. If we talk knowledge systems, I think one of the issues that we did not address ngicela o Mrs. Mzila nabo bonke omama basazise ngoba kunabantu, there are people who genuinely have traditional knowledge system, and then kuna abanye whom are called bogus. I know that there are, you know, for example, those that have been registered, but we do not have currently any mechanism to discern between the bogus, the fake traditional practitioners, and they are the ones who cause havoc. And they are the ones who make it impossible ukuthi sikwazi ukuthi sisebenzisane ngoba baza ngento lezi. Maybe we might want to also look at law enforcement. We talked in the morning about communication strategy, but we might want to also infuse law enforcement so that, you know, it's not tarnished. This effort, you know, this effort that we are having right now does not get tarnished. Without belaboring the point, Chairperson, finally, I believe, as a coordinator of school health program, that we believe, we actually define school health in the context of child protection. And if we talk child protection, I I still find it a bit difficult to entertain a situation where a 12 or 13-year-old tells me that she wants to prove that she's fertile for the future. So we have to also interrogate some of those narratives because it's very important for us. We know also that for Africa to have an HIV-free generation, girls who stay at school longer get better education and also postpone, being affected. That is how we view this whole thing. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I asked a question, how can we refrain? I have heard a speaker. I don't know if you need to interpret so that others can hear what she said. In short, you didn't. I think what she said was the fact that
bengithi mina ngoba siyazi ukuthi kunabanye abantu bathanda ukuthi bathi bona banikiwe ne ene siyazi ukuthi bayaqamba nina indlela enjani yokuthi ningenza ukuthi baziwe labantu ukuthi bangamoshi umsebenzi omuhle onwenzayo siyazwana ne nokuthi uma ukhona ikhona into yokuthi singasebenzisana namaphoyisa sisho sithi ukhona umunye ubhuti uhlala le uthi yena uphume emali uthi yena uyakwazi ukusebenzisa inyoka ukwenzani sazi ukuthi ucamba amanga. So abantu labo sifanele thina sisizana ukuthi sibasusa ukuthi umsebenzi wesintu ungamosheki. Into yokuqala, into yesibili, into yokuthi esihlulayo thina uma sibheka indaba bayibiza i-school health yokuthi uma abantwana basesikolweni bafanele bakwazi nokuba nempilo. Esihluphayo ukuthi uma ingane ino 12 years, why ingane yo 12 years afanele abe nomntwana kodwa Jesu wami? Ngoba siyazi ukuthi phela lo muntu usesemntwana, usesemanzi. Manje ke into leyo yokuthi singahlala phansi sibadala siza umntwana wa 12 years ethi yena ufuna ukubona ukuthi yakwazi ukubeletha yini na. Masisizaneni bantu bakithi singabona umntwana aba umzali.
Kanibingelela abantu abadala. Into ithi kulaba bantu laba abafaker ngokwesintu. Angithi kulaba bokuhamba futhi laba abathe ukukhanya ngebala. Bakhona nodokotela futhi nakhona ngithi. Bona sebetholakala ngicela ukuthi ngikhumbule indaba yokufakwa kwegrandpa. Ukuthi kwacishe konakala ngempela kwasiza kona ukuthi uhulumeni angenelele. Nakhona futhi thina asinawo ama-powers ukuthi sivele singenelele kumuntu umbono ukuthi uyasibulala isizwe. Okokuqala la uma ngabe uyinyanga kusetshenziswa imithi ehlukene. Uzothola ukuthi lo muntu okuyena ofakile and usebenzisa umuthi omubi. Lapho sekuzokusiza ukuthi uma ngabe yena ebulala wena lapha abone ukuthi uyalapha avela shaye wena. Ihamba kanjalo ke gogo. Okwesibili iloko kokuthi abantwana abamitha bese bancane. Ingoba abantwana badla cheese amaqanda. Umntwana na ukuthi indlela akakhula ngayo sesikhula kwi-generation yethu ilahlekile kuthina nakubantu abadala. Asawusaba umzimba wethu. Asawahloniphi amasiko ethu. And ngiyazi vele ukusho umakhelwane ngeke angitshele. mangabonwanga uma kuphelile. And lo muntu wakhona uzothi uyamtshela kubuza ukuthi iphe yakhe ingane nje obuzokhuza mina nje. So indaba yokukhulelwa kwabantwana ingane ishiselwa amagazi sencane ma. Uzuthola ukuthi nesibeletho baze bakuthuke abantu abadala bathi hayi ngoba vele wathomba wathonjiswa abafana usuku ungathukwa vele usuku utshola iqiniso. Sazi ukuthi thina umuntu uyakwazi ukuyelana nomuntu wesilisa emveni kokuthi esetsheliwe ekhaya nakhona futhi phela yahletshelwa kuthiwa wentombazane uzowavala phela amathanga ngoba usengamitha. Lo muntu akakathombi ngisho ku 12 years kodwa usefika ku 15 usethonjisiwe. So into engagwema lo into leyo ukuthi abazali bazama ukuhlala nabantwana and izingane ezimitha kakhulu ilezi ingane ezingenasi isisekelo nokutsheleka ingane isakhulu isino 7 years. Lento leyo kuhambela kude nabantwana iyona le ehlukumeza isizwe uyithuka ingane yabantu kanti ingane ayinalo lolwazi ebelidinga futhi okwangempela ukuthi ayifukamelekanga yonke into isithole emgaqweni khona ingane khona ingane ezihlolwayo. Ingane uma ke yangena emhlolweni definitely uma ke yaqala ukulala nomuntu wesilisa ngeke ingamithi ngoba iyenza into engayazi angithi umuntu ozoyilala leyo ngane leyo unalo lonke ulwazi imithi ingane yabantu kanti ayazi futhi ukuthi siyatheleleka futhi ayazi ukuthi imithiswa kanjani noma kumitha kanjani because ayinayo information enokugcwala engqondweni ukuthi once ngenza ukuthi kuzokwenzeka ukuthi kwala noma ingane seyitsheliwe emazikweni. Thokozani.
Okay, just to summarize what she was saying, number one, she was saying when it comes to even the Western or biomedicine, these fraudulent things, they as traditional healers do not have the power to stop the fraudulent or the fake traditional healers. And she also cited even some medicines that were faked and things like that. So she's basically citing that you cannot prevent them themselves, they cannot prevent that, number one. And she said that even those people, the people that use that terrible medicine, because she's acknowledging the fact that others use medicine to harm others. She's saying that even if you do help and heal the other people, the one that is harming will also try to harm you. That's one thing that she was addressing, question one. When it comes to question two, she was saying that the young people do not, or getting pregnant at a young age, they are the ones that do not have a foundation. It's the ones that are not taught to respect the community or the mothers, other mothers in the community. And they're just simply worried about your kids, or they're just simply worried about other things, because some parents, they feel the kids, even at the age of 7, the kids start having particular attitudes and way on how to do things. And she highlighted that the girls that go for virginity testing, when they have their first sexual intercourse, chances are very high that they get pregnant because they were stealing that chance or that opportunity to have sexual relations, and no one has taught them or told them that after this you have a possibility of falling pregnant.
Emakhosini ngiyabingelela kubo bonke abahola bakhona nama stakeholders onke. Ngithi angibonge kakhulu lolu suku lanamhlanje osulutholele ku-indigenous knowledge. Sibonga nathi ukumenywa singelutho sabila bendabuko sikuthi asondele sizobambisana ngoba kunzima kulezi insuku zanamhlanje. Into ebesizoyicela kakhulu ukubambisana sibe neqhaza nathi lokuthi uma ngabe kwenziwa izinto asibambisane ngoba siyabelaphi siyazama ukuzenza izinto. Siyazama ukubakholisa abantwana bethu baphume emaceleni. Kunabantwana abakhona kuma university abangawazi amasiko abo, abangazi nokuthi bavela kanjani. Umntwana avela athunyelwe la athi mesebona umuntu oyisangoma ebese yaxwaya athi hayi kwathiwa umuntu oyisangoma yathakatha. Ebesizocela nje namhlanje ukuthi nathi uma ngabe lana khona nisethule ebantwini nisazise ngoba emiphakathini yethu siyaziwa. Nokuthi ke kukhona abelaphi abahambe beplaga amaphepha la emgwaqweni kuthiwa kukhona ama self abortion. Lo ma self abortion akaziphumi kuthina njengabelaphi bendabuko bemvelo abaphumi esangomeni. Ngeke ngithi ngumelaphi nje bese ngithi mina ngiyakwazi ukukhipha isisu ngoba isiko ngiyalazi. Namhlanje bengicela kakhulu ukuthi nathi singelutho sibambisane silwe nalolu lengane zethu ezibhubhayo ezibulawa yizifo. Sihambele nezikolo nomphakathi kuyo yonke indawo sizazise ngokukhuliswa kwabantwana. Ngiyabonga.
When it comes to these papers and placards that you see of safe abortions, what, those things, they do not come from traditional healers because they know the cultures and the traditions. Ukuthi it is not something which is promoted. So they are not involved in that. It's not people that have trained as traditional healers, number one. And then the second thing is that she was appreciating the fact of being invited and saying that we should work together in ensuring that the young people are trained on all the issues that we're talking about, HIV and AIDS and also pregnancy, and how they can keep themselves. Thank you. Mina, just to add something, I know Gutin, but just to add to my questions, the ones that she had, I heard she was doctor, the one in the corner.
Yeah.
When it comes to the fake or the traditional healers, which are not correct or no matter of fake. Firstly, I think, I don't know whether you have heard, but there's a process of accreditation and certification of the Department of Science and Technology. And so that is one issue that can be assisted to try and decrease that. And when it comes to the teenage pregnancy, and I'm going to say this as a Zulu person as well, it is not culturally correct to have young people being pregnant. What happens is that in the Zulu culture, it is promoted that a young person maintains themselves until marriage. Hence, you have the testings, the what, you know, the virginity testing to try and do that. Now, that is tradition. But because the young people get out of tradition and then they do things. But if we talk about culture says keep yourself. Even the rites of passage, as Uma was still going to continue presenting, the rites of passage says you remain a virgin up until you get married. That is the Zulu culture. And again, it will then address everything that we are saying, etc., etc., etc. Thank you.
Thank you. I think you have raised a very important point, because that's why I said one other thing is that in the now when we are discussing, we are reframing. We want to see. I think the person from IBIS raised a very important point to say, how do we reach the young ones? Because now they will think that going to ukutlolwa, virginity testing is primitive. So the child is at the university. So what are the methods? I think what SRH has to do is to try and find how to modernize some of the cultural issues that we feel are important. How can we modernize them and package them in a way that they will be acceptable to the young generation? I think that's something that is very critical.
Okay, into uprofessional ngaphambili ukuthi uma sekufika kule inkundla lesinayo njengoba kade ngikhuluma ngendaba yokuhlola kweintombi ukuthi zikhona ezinye ezithi how were you speaking Zulu English? English. Abanye bebekade bethi abafuna ukuthi bebe ingcenye yakho ngenxa yokuthi bakubukelela kude and babona sengathi into yakudala, so intsha yamanje ayithanda kube ingcenye yakho. So usephosa inselela ke kule platform ukuthi senza kanjani ukuthi intsha noma indlela esibeka ngakhona lo msebenzi ubonakale umuhle nasekubantu abasha. Uthi ngoba ingane ese university angeke izibe nendaba nokuhamba nokuyohlolwa kanjalo sipackage kanjani ke lesi simo sokugcina kweintombi kanjalo kuze zizokwazi ukuthi ziqhubeke zibe ziyintombi up until zizeyifike lapho esezithi sishada khona, besides futhi lokho ikube indlela yokugcina isinto.
Ngiyanibingelela ke. Ngifuna ukubuyela lapha ekuthenini singakwenza nje sikwenze konke kodwa ikhona le esilahle kuyona uthe umakhosi eqala wathi ake sibuyele emasikweni ngoba kunje izinto zenzeka kalula kulezi ingane salahla amasiko bakwethu siwalahlile amasiko ethu ake kubuyelwe emuva kuqiniswe lapha oxege khona ibhawodi lamasiko ngoba ukuba siyaqala nje sihlehle sibheke la kwaqalwa khona ukusukwa emasikweni noma ukulahlwa kwamasiko ukuthi emva kwalokho zingakanani izinto ezonakele nje einganeni ubheke zewunga izingane ukuthi zingakanani ubheke ukukhishwa kwezisu ukuthi bangakanani abantwana bakhipha izisu laba abantwana bagezwa nini ngoba phela mase bekhipha izisu funa bagezwe ubheke ingane ziyeqa emakhaya zijaha umkipito nje omkhulu ayashisa amagazi alezi ingane kuningi okonakela ingane zilahla amakhaya uyabona mawubheka lezi ingane ihlala estradini mothi uyafika uthi uyayilandela ingane yo iphuma ekhaya eliphilayo iphuma ekhaya elihle kuyadliwa nje ikhaya eli right lapha eNtuzuma mina ngihlala eNtuzuma kuke kwafika laba abadliwa unga kakhulu abaningi nje sabacela officeini sahlala nabo phansi yabona nje ingane zayikhala zithi asazi ukuthi siphuma kanjani kulento sasingenile kuyona sicela usizo nisilekelele bogogo siyacela usizo ziyenzile lento ingane ngoba ziyekeleleke emumva sithe mase sihlanganisa nje kalula nabazali sacela nje nasemadlozini naNkulunkulu kodwa wabona nje ukuthi lento lukhona uyekelo oluphuma ekuthina sibadala zibuyele iningi emakhaya zibuyele esikoleni ziyafunda zenza yonke into ingane zi right sahlala nazo nje phansi ezavuma ukuya kuma zaya zinye zahluleka kodwa zazenza zona ukuthi kuphume kuzona lento zi right ezinye ziyafunda khona nesayisonta sibuyele emasontweni ezasezikiyekile amasiko abaluleke ngalendlela yokuthi ngisho subekile umuthi la kodwa makungaqalwanga osikweni ngeke kwenzeke lutho ngoba umuthi uhamba phezulu kosiko ushilo umama Mankomo isiko liyavala livale nje yonke into kubalulekile bakithi ngifuna ukugcizelela le yesiko ukuthi ake sibuyelene emasikweni ethu silungise into zethu zibuyele esimeni njengoba sasinjalo uzubone njenganje manje azinamahloni ngisho zenzani ukweba zebemini ke zebe nento obonayo ke le ukuthi ayike lokho ekhaya ingane intshontshe iqeda ishayiva amasiko bakwethu abalekile avala izinto eziningi ngiqonda ukusho njalo ukuthi ake sibuyeleni emasikweni.
Ugogo was highlighting the importance of going back to the tradition. She was making an example of what happens in the communities where you find young girls and boys busy on drugs, busy on streets. And some of them, they have been helped where they came to the community. And as a traditional healer also as well, she formed some part of forums and things like that where they're active in the community. And they've helped some of them, and some of them have even returned to their homes. But she's saying that some of them, the root cause of their problems is also their traditions and ignoring their ancestral stories like umsamo wabo and things like that.
Asibonge Prof. Mhlambe okwami kuzoba kufishane. ukubuka isizwe sakithi siphela mhlambe kuyosiza singabelaphi nama university lawa acele ukusebenzisana nabelaphi ukuthi basilalele uma sikhuluma ukuthi kudala kwakwenziwana ingane kudala zazingayitholi ingane ngoba zaze saba ukuthi kunomthetho omile ukuthi make watholakala ungaseyona intombi kade uyohlolwa kini kuphuma inkomo yokugeza isizwe isigodi sakini oyiwadi okuyona ngoba utholakale wena ngane yakankomo usunjani ungaseyona intombi kwakusatshwa kudala ukuthi ukuthi wenze amahlazo noma wenze ukuganga ngoba kwakunomthetho owawumile mhlawumbe uma besingathi amapolisi angenziwa awastike ekutheni uma ngabuya imithetho emidala singasho ukuthi uhlukumeza izingane ngoba siyabona izingane zethu ziyafa akufi izingane zethu kuphela nathi siyafa ngoba kunemithetho esathi ama superstition asibuyelene emasikweni ngoba amakhosi ayesebenza ngokuthi kwakwazi ukuthi kwenzeka iphutha kuzophuma inkomo kuleya muzi kunzima ukuphuma inkomo kankomo iyohlawulela ingane ngoba ingane ingafunanga ukuzwa kunzima ukuthi uma ozala mina ukuthi ayekelele ingane ihambe ibuye ebusuku kunzima ukuthi ingane ihambe iyodlala ucabhayela emfuleni kunzima ukuthi umama ayeke ingane angayazi ukuthi iyephi uma singenza ipolicy yethu iqine kodwa ngokubambisana bese sesiyenza kuyolunga eSouth Africa sengqina ngizothi ma university ningabona ubuhlalo besifakayo bese nithi abantu bonke babelaphi ngicela ukugcizelela lokho ugovernment wethu uye wathi udinga ukuthi abelaphi baregistrwe baziwe mangene kuma database uye wathi akwenziwa ama organization sakhetha omongameli bama organization like ngenze example sine organization le phetho mama umzila okuthiwa iTHO traditional healers organization sinale organization engikuyona ekuthiwa uNuphatha phecelezi National Unitary Professional Association Traditional Health Practitioners of South Africa lama organization uma kunezinto zaka SANEC ayathintwa ahamba yo attenda ama workshop lama organization ayasebenza KZN ukuthi abambe imhlangano ahamba ama workshop akwazi ukuthi akhulume nabantu phezuke sekunjalo ma university akhona nakuthina o flight by night kuthina esiregistered but kuyasiza lokhu ukuthi sibheke ama leader asilidayo ukuya emphakathini emakhosini ukuya emakhanseleni ukuya endiweni sokwenza isiqiniseko sokuthi lo muntu uyaziwa ukuthi uyinyanga for how long uyaziwa lo muntu ukuthi uyisangoma sambona ukuthi uyisangoma ngo1 no2 no3 uyaziwa lo muntu ukuthi umthandazi ngo1 no2 no3 waziwa kuphi waziwa ikhansela waziwa inkosi waziwa imeya waziwa umphakathi ukuthi lo muntu njani umelaphi ma university maningahamba lapho nikwazi ukubona abantu ababelaphi bavume futhi ukuthi bayo interviewer ukuthi ngempela babelaphi yini bese nifuna izingcodi noma izingweti zabelaphi abazokwazi ukusho ukuthi makuthiwa ukhuluma ngekhanda kuyaziwa ukuthi ikhanda lilashwa kanjani lingabhalwa phansi lemithi eshiwo umzila kodwa kuba ukuthi wena uyazi ukuthi ikhanda lishakana although ukusebenza kwethu kwengefani nezipho zethu ingefani kodwa ekugcineni kuyaziwa umelaphi sithi azibuye emasisweni kuphele ubugebengu sengcina ma university thina ezabelaphi asisebenzi ngezicuyo zabantu asisebenzi ngamathambo abantu, asisebenzi ngalabantu abamhlophe kuthiwa ama-barbarism. We against lokho. Manje if unizobona umuntu efaka ubuhlalo bese nithi isangoma yohlala kuneyinkinga kuphuma emaphepheni ukuthi izangoma inyanga zinobugebengu ziyabulala ziyathakatha sizicozwana because imigudu ayilandelwa okuyiyona yona. Ngizothi kunina ama university sikhona so KZN sila akulandelani imigudu ningasebenzi noma ubani. Ngiyabonga.
Uma is just simply expressing the importance of ensuring that the traditional healers that are used and worked with are real traditional healers, and it should not just be seen by wearing the beads on their hands, etc., to assume that they are therefore traditional healers. And then she was sharing the different ways in which we can ensure that we are finding the right people.
Thank you. I think she has said a mouthful. I heard a lot about what she was saying. And I think, just to summarize, the question was how can we reframe? And I think what came out was that we definitely have to understand that we have to package the good things that the modern, that the traditional healers or practitioners or cultural practices, good practices, we have to package them in a way that they will be available and attractive to the young ones. And something that came out strongly was the issue of going back to our roots, going back to the basics. So as we reframe, we definitely have to look at that. And I think one other thing that was really very strong was that traditional health practitioners are legitimate practitioners. They've got organizations, and then they've got different organizations, and they practice and they are known. So we definitely have to work with them, knowing very well that they've got knowledge. And I also picked up that the issue of nutrition is also very important, and that also affects the way our teenagers grow very fast. I think those are the things that I picked up. So I think let's pass and say, okay, we have found a few things that we can use while we are reframing, but what type of theoretical framework or philosophy will guide the way we would like SRH to be? Si tlawanga njani lento, am I right?
Yes.
Yeah, so sifunaku, we want to wear a head, a total different head. We are seeing where things are bad in South Africa. Things are going wrong. And we want to help Annie Grace that when she starts doing these things, it must really be something that is unique, that one can say KZN is doing great job between their university and their traditional health practitioners. Siyanjani lapho?
Mhlambe ene angiphinde ngibingelele ngeke ngabingelele ekuqaleni ngabuye ngathuliswa. Well ke singakayi la ekuthenini mhlambe sizo kwenza kanjani, kodwa khona ebengifisa ukuthi mhlawumbe uma sithi sifika la ekuthenini senza kanjani kodwa kube mhlambe nezingqinamba. Ngihluphekile ke usisi lobe lana usehambile. Ngiyamangala mayithi khona ama traditional healers awamemayo agcine ngafikanga. Angimazi ukuthi usuke exhumane nobani. Angimazi usuke exhumane nobani ngoba ngikhona mina kwi district eTheku. Khona uKakayi kwe province, khona uMama Nkomo kwe province. Ukuthi usuke exhumane nobani meme lawo ma traditional healers angawatholi. We don't know, but bengithi ngizobuza ukuthi mhlambe yibaphi abamema ngoba mofuna ama traditional healers uzowathola kumzila, uwathole kuKakayi, uwathole kuMankomo. Ila uzowathola khona. Mangabe ke umema basehlathini uzongabatholi. Bengifuna ukucacisa lokho. La ke manje ke ngifisa ukuthi mhlambe kwi presentation yami khona benizokuthola ukuba ngitholiswanga, but ngifuna ukusho kanjena ngumbelethisi mina. Kodwa inkinga yami yodwa, mangibala kusukela ngiqalile ukwelapha sengakhe abantu ngisho ukuvula ibeletho bangaphezulu ka30 kusukela ngiqalile abebengenabo abantwana abanabantwana kunamhlanje. Inkinga iyodwa, njengomelapha anginalo mina ikhadi lomgomo. Ngizombelethisa mina umuntu sengike nganenkinga ngakhuluma emshiyeni ngaze ngaqhakezekela ikhanda. Ngibelethise omunye untombazane ama-twins. Kwasho ukuthi anginalo ikhadi lomgomo. Kwafuneka ukuthi manje angibizwe angeke okhuluma, kufuneka ngichaze kabanzi kwacaca ukuthi kwagcina kusho sister bakithi umuntu wakithi omnyama uthi niyahlupha ngoba nishiya ibhedlela zikhona nigijime niye kubelaphi bendabuko. Kodwa lo melaphi wendabuko uyena odale ukuthi lo muntu benama fibroids. Ama fibroids ayabahlula odokotela. Angikhathali nginaba ama cases abantu ababuya kodokotela benama fibroids. Afike kumina ayithola ingane kade sekulanduliwe kuthiwa ngeke atholwe abantwana. Kodwa inkinga ekhona ile yokuthi anginalo ke ikhadi lomgomo. Sekufuneka lo muntu ngingamsizi ngoba nakho mina ngingeke ngikwazi ukubhala ikhadi lomgomo akwazi ukuyobhalisa certificate somntwana nali neqolo libhilitile abantu balifuna. So ke manje mhlambe bengizothi mina uma kuyiwa phambili bengizothi asikubuke nalokho ukuthi thina njengabelaphi tho kulokho kokuthi abantwana baziphethe bazoziphatha ngoba inhlangano kama organizations isikhathi esiningi basebenza imali. Kuvuka manje inhlangano ezimele izingane amalungelo ezingane bese bethi thina masihlola abantwana bathi it's a harmful practice. Ubuyibuza ukuthi umhlukumeza kanjani umuntu uma uzothi lala phansi ufake lezi ithupha nje zombili uthi ubuke ngehlo usuhlikihlene nje lapho osekuyi harmful practice. So abantwana ke bayazi banamalungelo. So ke manje noma ungathi abeze bazohlolwa bazoza labo ngabazali babo kodwa abanye futhi ngeke sibathole. Abanye ke inkolo nayo futhi inomthelela. Ngoba igcina manje isilwa against isintu. Kugcine manje ezama izinto kubukeka ngazathi amademoni. Kodwa futhi labantu abasondelanga kumina ukuzobuza ukuthi kahle yini lento yakho. Kufika indoda enothayi nje ivele ibhala into eyithandayo. Media. Njoba ngithi mina nginabantu engibasizayo kodwa akekho umuntu oyintathelo ke wafika kumina nje ukuthi emzila ngizokuthiwa wenza into enhle. Ake kufa umuntu esigodlweni. Uzoyibona imidi. So ke manje umsebenzi wethu awukwazi ngoba asikwazi ukubhala amabhodi mawumelapho semthethweni awuyibhala ibhodi ngoba umuntu uduma ngomsebenzi awenzile. Kodwa laba ababhalayo lapha emgaqweni yilaba abasuke beyisukela la beyisukela khona babhale futhi bona bakhokhelwayo. Bengifuna ukusho kanjalo nje ukuthi ngaze kube kubi mhlawumbe mangaze ngiphume ngingashongo lutho kanti nginezinto nami ebengikade ngithi ngizozikhofa out mhlambe obekuzogcina ngoba lento njengoba ibithinta IKS bengicabanga ukuthi ithinta mina njengomelaphi. Ngiyabonga kakhulu. Thank you.
Was highlighting the fact that she has helped so many people that were battling to have kids, maybe because of fibroids or whatever, but she has over 30 people that she has helped. But people do not come and write the good when she does that. But should anything happen, media is always the first one to say, hey, you have done this and done that. She's also saying even in hospitals, after helping people to give birth, citing how she helped another lady to give birth to twins, that when they went to the hospital now, after assisting her, a nurse, and she's saying, an African nurse was saying, you know, people are so problematic, they're always rushing to traditional healers and not coming to the hospitals, etc. So she's highlighting the fact that it is very, very important that that their work be respected and what they do also be respected, because they do know what it is that they're doing, and she's a birth attendant, and that is what she does.
I just want to say bye-bye.
Okay.
And Professor Kaya and Professor Tesho went to receive President Chisano. So that's the reason why they are not here. But in terms of your contributions, I think that the work will be taken forward by Professor Professor Gail, my colleague here. She's done a good job in the morning, and together with Professor Mlaozi, you will summarize the way forward. Okay. But in terms of the last point that was being made, I think 24th was the last date for the accreditation, the recognition. 24th of August is the last date that we had asked you to nominate people who are going to sit on this body that will begin to certify the knowledge holders in KwaZulu-Natal as a pilot. The contract between the University of KwaZulu-Natal and the DST I signed it off last week for that. So I'm leaving to go to Cape Town, because tomorrow the National Council of Provinces, which involved you, they came in this province and you did the public awareness. The work is going to be concluded tomorrow so that it can go back to the big National House for a debate. If that is agreed upon within the next month or so, then maybe by December, the President will sign off the bill. So our dream of beginning to do this work of certifying, so that the respect, the professionalism that is required out of the healers will then begin and finish. So continue to pray for us so that we have this success. And stay well, and we'll meet next time when we go. But we are committed to your work, and we want to work together to make this a reality. Thank you, and bye.
One of the things that I was going to say is that I was going to just say a few things that are problematic to the traditional health practitioners that they have mentioned to me. One was relating to the issue of recognition, so that I can link it to the question that you asked about which framework can we actually use. They mentioned the recognition of their professionalism as well as expertise, because as Obo Mama have mentioned, already they are organized, they know their expertise and their specialization. The only thing that is a problem now is that they are getting bogus people to join in. So now they don't have monitoring systems in place to actually manage who is real and who isn't. Because some of these people, they actually go and attend like short courses or whatever that is being offered, and then they come, they think that if they put a certificate somewhere of attendance, of participation, that actually qualifies them to be something. Therefore, they were sort of hinting that if they maybe the tertiary institutions, and then maybe in South Africa, the Minister of Health can actually try to recognize them in the sense that they also get some kind of a training that is also guided and governed and managed by themselves. So because they have experts amongst themselves, then form this kind of bodies and the people that are going to be training them to be the ones who are actually managing them. So that was leading to the issue of recognition, as well as the database, because now, like for example, if you talk about the Northern KwaZulu-Natal, we hear that there are about 9,000 traditional health practitioners. But is that true? So those are the kind of things now they need to say, what kind of criteria, assessment criteria that actually qualifies a person to be a traditional practitioner in this particular area. So those were the kind of the issues that we're talking about. But if now we're talking about how do we actually maybe bring it close to home as the tertiary institutions, one of the interventions that I'm looking at is we already have what we call community engagement in our own institutions. And as we speak, community engagement is one of those pillars that do not make any sense to anyone. They are underestimated if we are talking about the academics themselves. Because if you go there, they don't even carry any productivity unit, and if you are involved in community engagement, it's like you don't have anything else to do, better to do. Therefore, this could be one of the elements that maybe can be formalized to say, if you engage into these kind of projects and then significantly it can be measurable, then this is one way of actually interacting and actually making a significant contribution in uplifting our own communities.
I think we are now towards the closing. I think you have answered the question that I was still going to ask as to how can we design a unique platform for SRH that incorporate all. And you are talking about community engagement. I just don't know, Annie Grace. I think another thing maybe would be to look at having a sort of like what? Continuation of this dialogue. I think they are very, very important. And then maybe have it maybe in one of the Gogo's house around the fire. And then you definitely engage in more debates like this. I think that's something that is coming out. I think they need a platform to talk more. And then I think one other thing that we could really guide that would be to look at what elements can be incorporated in SRH, IKS-SRH, because I think it came out from their presentation that there's a lot that they can offer that will enable us to differentiate between our modern SRH and traditional, and then see how to merge the two in a way that will package it. Because I was really very concerned about the colleague from IBIS. I felt that she was representing the young ones, and then that voice must not be ignored. It definitely has to be something that we have to look into.
Let's mention something about IT, the use of IT.
Yes.
So I'm just thinking about the ongoing debates and seminars on social media. Because if we engage youth as well as Abo Mama, because now they are also on WhatsApp. So if we can actually make use of that, then I think we can move forward where we get the youth as well as Abo Mama to have a common platform where they can discuss issues. Then I think we can get somewhere.
Yeah.
Where sisuzodwa cela ungidlulisele lo myalezo kunenye into ekuthina belaphi bendabuko ngokungabi nalo ulwazi oluphelele siyasaba ukuphumela obala umuzo obuzwa ngobuwena uthi kuthathwa ulwazi lakho kuse ubaba umkhize uzweli imkhize sasenziswa ama interview singabela bendabuko ilawa uthola khona ini isitifiketi sakho esine practice number kuhambe lokho kwaphela ku Department of Health ukuthi kwacedwa yini angazi ngoba ngabe ukwazile ukuthi kuphume amabele namakhoba ukuze sisale nabelaphi abantu angabawona abelaphi basale endleleni abelaphi laba abangacedile banenkinga abafuna ukuyokwenziswa ama interview bathi yidlozi lami yingoba uthema wenzelwa igobongo lomndiki uvulelwa inhlanhla yakho noma uvulelwa izinto zakho usuthi usuyisangoma ungesona isangoma so mina ngithi uDepartment of Health nixhumane nama-leaders abelaphi ukuze kubuye indaba ama-practice number ukuze ngoba thina silapha nje ama-practice number aphuma kuDr Zweli Mkhize abalandelayo bawathola kulokhuzana kumama uNkonyeni ababevuma ukuhlolwa ngoba babezethemba ukuthi bangabelaphi sikhathele kule kukhulunywa ngathi kambi ngabantu abangafuni ukuphumela obala akuhlukeke amakhoba namabele ngiyabonga.
Again, Umam is emphasizing the importance of ensuring that the right traditional healers or called traditional healers. Then she was citing the fact that previously the Department of Health used to interview them, to test them, to see whether they are traditional healers or not. And they used to get certificates with practice numbers, and that later stopped happening. And they wish that things like that can be resurrected so that it can be separated, the fake and the not so fake.
I think the last 30 minutes to an hour has been very instrumental for moving the agenda forward for SRH and IKS.
Lesikhathi esisichithile noma isikhathi esisebenzile sixoxa sesibe isikhathi esibaleke kakhulu ukuthi siqhubezele phambili lo msebenzi esizokhuluma ngawo.
In the discussion that we've just had, you have actually provided us a strategic pathway towards achieving SRH within IKS, a working plan forward.
Kule ngxoxo nje sesibe nayo sesikwazile ukubona ukuthi sizokwazi kanjani ukuthi siqhubekele phambili uma sekufika kulo msebenzi esikhuluma ngawo.
I just want to remind everyone that this is the first meeting, the first platform for SRH. So we couldn't attend to everything in one day, but the point was to talk about what we needed to do in order to move the agenda forward.
Into ebalekile siqonda ukuthi umhlangano oqala lo bekubalekile ukuthi sithi ukukhuluma ngezinye izinto yize singakwazanga usiqede konke ngenxa yokuthi umhlangano oqala and futhi usuku olodwa kodwa kubalekile sibone ukuthi sizoqhubeka kanjani sisebenze kuya phambili.
We've been here since 8 o'clock this morning. We're the survivors. You guys have provided us with so much rich and valued information. We're going to give you a applause. So know this for this initiative. We're videotaping, we're audio taping, we've been taking notes. I've been at my laptop trying to record everything that you're saying in bulleted points, because at the end of the day, we will have all the documentation highly summarized. I'm sure it will be translated into the appropriate language, and then we will share it. Someone asked for the presentations, we'll give you the presentations, because we will ask for your feedback. We want you to continue the dialogue and discussion. Today is certainly not enough. We want to continue the discussion so that the next time we have a meeting, which will be in the community with a go-go or wherever we deem it's important to have the next discussion.
Wonke ke lokho esikwenzayo namhlanje kuyaqoshwa njengoba nibona ivideo kuphinde futhi kuqoshwe nanomsindo kanjalo futhi nanokubhalwa kuzoba khona kuzothi mase kubhaliwe ke kubonakala ukuthi nikuthola kanjani lokho kubhaliwe ukuze sizobona ukuthi siqhubekela phambili kanjani nokusebenza and uyasho ukuthi kusazophinda kube khona eminye futhi imhlangano engalolu hlobo unanoma kuthiwa whether izoba sendaweni yomelapho yedwa kanjalo kuzobona kathi kuqhubeka kanjani.
So thank you. We will see you soon. I'd also ask through Prof. Kaya is that when you receive the documentation, or even before you receive any documentation, if you still want to continue to send us critique, feedback, we would appreciate it. We want to use this to continue moving this initiative forward. So this is not the only time and the only day. We will continue this initiative forward, and we need your input and feedback. If not in person, send it to us or whatever format the IKS Center determines is important. So now I'm going to turn it over to Anna Grace, and she's going to officially close the session for us.
A round of applause for Professor Hughes. What a day. Thank you all so much for firstly honoring our invitation to be part of this platform. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedules to be here with us. Some of our facilitators, our presenters, our colleagues, they flew 1,000 miles to come to South Africa. 9,000 miles for Dr. Lipster, and they have managed to spend the whole day with us. We have various stakeholders who have come from different parts of the country. Thank you a million times for your commitment. A special thanks to our interpreter. You know, Miss Masinga Uzodwa, she doesn't need to be given notes beforehand. That's the beauty of how she does it. You don't give her notes beforehand. You present, you talk, she translates perfectly. So a round of applause for Miss Masinga. We at the center are so proud of her, and we know whenever we need translation, she is there for us. Thank you so much to our IK holders, Mama Wetu. Thank you for the valuable information that you have provided. Thank you to all our facilitators. As has been said, this platform is an ongoing process. This is just the beginning. We are going to share the proceedings of this day through emails, through all the other forms of communication. One thing that I would have wanted us to do today was to establish working groups. But because our time was so limited, through our communications, we are going to send out requests for voluntarily being in the working groups. I think it would be best to establish the working groups according to various thematic areas that we are going to reframe. And then our stakeholders, you choose which area you best fit in. And we will also keep you advised of the proceedings of the platform. We will keep you advised of the meetings that we still intend to hold. And all the notes for today will be made available to you. Unfortunately, we could not play. We had a video presentation from Dr. Andrea Mason. She is in the United States. She is an African-American woman. She also wanted to share with us perspectives of African-American women on sexual reproductive health from an IKS perspective. But we also have a written presentation from her. So Glory is going to pass around the presentation. We will also incorporate that when we collate all our the notes for this meeting. Once again, thank you all for coming. For those who are continuing with us for the conference, we will meet again tomorrow. Have a good night's rest. We also have tea in the lobby for those who would want to have a refreshment. Thank you so much.
Siyabonga kakhulu.